Hi, welcome to Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. Before Joyce Murray made a name for herself as a leadership candidate for the Liberal Party of Canada, she sat as a member of Parliament, and prior to that as a cabinet minister in the provincial government of British Columbia. Joyce Murray was born in South Africa. She came to Canada at the age of 7, and she joins me now to talk about a very interesting life beyond politics. Joyce Murray, welcome to Beyond Politics. It's really great to have you here.
Well, my pleasure, Catherine.
You have had a truly busy past few months, several months, and now, in a way, I mean, the leadership race itself, the Liberal leadership race is over. Does that mean that you now have the chance to take a breath and to sit back and relax a little bit?
Well, it is certainly less intensive a schedule than it was while I was in the leadership race. It was a lot of fun, though. So at the end of it, I did not feel super exhausted, and because I was just really enjoying the connection with people who have similar ideas of where we can go with politics in Canada. So it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of momentum. A lot of people signed up to support me, and really, it will be my role, my job. I've decided is to stay in contact with people who have some similar values, and encourage them to stay connected with the Liberal Party, support the new leader, and help us present an alternative vision in 2015.
That's one of the tricky things about a leadership race is that. You've made the decision that you're going to stay involved and stay active, and yet how do you maintain that connection with your own supporters and bring them into the bigger fold of the bigger tent? And it's a lot of work. I mean, it must be an ongoing thing for you to think about on a day in and day out basis.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's not that complicated. I entered politics because of sustainability and making sure that not only the economic and social sides of that, but the environmental side was fully present in public policy making. I mean, that's why I'm in politics. So for me to continue to speak on that and connect with people who care about that as well is easy. And then the other side of it during the leadership campaign is the electoral reform and democracy, I guess, platform that I had. And for me, that was, if we are going to create a sustainable society, which is complicated and it involves really working together, then how do we do that? Well, we need to have a different way of doing politics, one that really nurtures cooperation, that rewards and advances the idea of parties and MPs working together, because frankly the challenges are too complicated for us to be able to really get on top of them if what we're spending our time doing is figuring out how to fend off attacks and beat the other guy and the other team. So a means to the ends of sustainability is a different way of doing politics, and so I had some ideas about how to do that, and so again I continue to believe that that mechanisms and a electoral system that rewards and motivates cooperation with each other is the best way to go. So I'll just continue to talk about those things within the framework of the Liberal team under the leadership of our new leader, Justin Trudeau.
Sometimes when you're a politician and you're advocating that politics should be done differently, it can really ruffle feathers. It can make people nervous as well. And you have just come out of this leadership campaign where you didn't seem, not only did you not seem afraid to do that, to make people nervous or to ruffle feathers, but you also weren't afraid to take on the challenge of running it all. And it was a tough race because there was someone in it who had a tremendous amount of profile going into it. What is it about you that's willing to take on those kind of challenges and not be put off?
I like adventure. I've got a number of times in my life where I've jumped into the unknown. And so I guess I'm someone who doesn't want to plod ahead with routine, known activities all the time. So, and yes, there was clearly a very, very popular front runner when I decided I think it was Labor Day last year, that this is something I needed to do. Because I wanted to advance the issues that I care about, like sustainability and electoral reform, as well as other things like women's equality, women in leadership, and good public policy in terms of drug reform to reduce the access of young people to marijuana, and frankly, take the profits out of the criminal underworld's hands and put them in government's hands where they can regulate and tax and control the substance. I felt that with the Liberal Party having taken such a beating in the last election, it was time to think about a different set of ideas to present to the public, ones that are based on good public policy, maybe a bit gutsy or not 100% popular. But that really, I mean, I don't want to get too political here, but that is the history of the Liberal Party of Canada. I mean, the things the party has done in terms of publicly funded healthcare or species at risk legislation, or even balancing the books after 19 years of deficits, those were not universally popular ideas at the time. But in retrospect, they were the right thing to do. And so I think this is, our party has a heritage of tackling difficult but good for the public benefit long-term kinds of issues. So.
You were born in South Africa.
That's right.
And you lived there till you were about 7?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have memories of your time there as a child?
Yeah, I do. I have really good memories, actually. We had a big family. My dad was from a family of 6 or 7 children, and a lot of my cousins lived nearby. And so I do have good memories of the time there.
Your mom was an American,
yeah,
is that
my
right?
mom was an American.
Okay. How did that happen? How did a South African and an American meet and marry?
Yeah, well, they've got a lovely love story. My mother was studying in Paris as an art student, and my father had just come through the Second World War, where he was a soldier, and he was taking his mother and his sister to Europe to see some parts of Europe that he had experienced during the war. And he met my mother on his return to South Africa, and her father gave her a gift of a safari in Africa for her 21st birthday.
Oh, wow. So, what a great gift.
Well, there's an adventurous herself.
Absolutely.
So she charged off.
And you know what, a brave dad, too, frankly.
So they met on the boat. They knew each other for all of 2 weeks. They weren't even dating, but they hit it off. They corresponded and decided to get married through correspondence. And then my mom, who was back in America a year later, took a boat. She jumped on a boat to South Africa to marry this chap that she'd known for 2 weeks.
Was her family beside themselves? Or were they supportive?
Well, they were pretty supportive, because she was a strong-willed young woman, and she had decided this was the guy for her. And so she went to South Africa. Her father and her stepmother joined her for the wedding there, and she got married, and my parents had a wonderful relationship for over 40 years until my dad passed away.
How remarkable. Was she lonely? Did she ever talk about being lonely there? Because if her family went home... Well,
you know, that's not my... She was there for 10 years.
Yeah.
And there was a trip to America in the middle of that time when I was 3.
Okay.
Her parents came several times to South Africa.
Okay.
I think she was someone who created relationships and activities around her wherever she was. And so she had a really strong social network, and in the small town we lived in. So that's not, I'm sure she was lonely, but that's not something that I recall her talking about.
What was your dad like? Because if he was someone who would choose to live with a woman who was probably incredibly interesting and fun, but also very independent, He must have been an interesting character himself.
Well, he's someone who was a true gentleman in the classic sense of the word, and respectful, big-hearted person. In fact, when my parents moved to North America and they settled in Canada because that was as close as my mom could get to her parents in Portland, and my father, who was a Commonwealth, had a
Yes.
surveyor's certification from a Commonwealth country, could more
Transfer
easily.
that.
Yeah, and he had to do a couple of years' work, but so they moved to Vancouver. And but not very long after, and we were in Williams Lake for half a year as well, and then back to Vancouver. But my dad encouraged my mom to go to study architecture because they had built their own house in South Africa, and my mom had essentially started to watch what the contractor was doing and go, well, wait a minute, I don't think that's going to work, what you're doing with the roof lines here. And so she had gotten right involved as an art student, but with a real 3D ability to see 3D. And so my dad said to her, you should become an architect. I really encourage you to go back to school and study. So she did. She went to the UBC School of Architecture.
How old were you at the time?
I think I was about 10 when she went back to school.
Did you have siblings?
My sister is 2 years older, and
Okay.
my brother is 5 years younger. Yeah.
So she had a solid family life to worry about as well
Yeah.
when she went back to school.
That's right, and my dad was working out of town during those years.
Was he really?
Yeah,
How did she manage?
Totally capable woman who was clear about what she wanted, and enrolled us in being part of the team. And my dad would come home every couple of weekends. He'd come back from the interior where he worked as a surveyor, and so she was essentially from 61 until 69. She was a student and a virtual single parent.
Wow. Why did they leave South Africa?
You know, their plan had been to spend a certain number of years in South Africa and then a certain number of years back in North America, to give their children the experience of both the African continent and the North American continent. But my mom, but we came back, and they had a plan to have 4 children, but they short-circuited their plan because of apartheid, and because of some of the things that were happening. And my sister and I were in school, and we had teachers that were really that were advancing propaganda that was divisive and racist. And my mother said, "We can't have that. We have to leave now." So that's what happened. So they left about 4 years earlier than planned, and we settled in Vancouver.
Were they ever, I guess bitter might be too strong a word, but were they ever upset at the fact that they'd had to leave earlier than they had planned, that it had changed the course of the life that they thought that they had laid out for themselves?
No, I don't think so. I think both my parents are pragmatists, and it's time to go. We're going now. And I mean, they came to Canada with very little, but they proceeded to work very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad had worked for Ministry of Forests for a while out in the woods. He didn't have his survey ticket at that point, so gradually he worked to get his professional survey status in Canada, and he worked for forestry and BC Hydro. And my mom, as I said, went back to school. She not only did her architect's degree, she then did a master's and focused on seniors housing.
Did she really?
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Why was that a passion for her? She was ahead of her time.
She was ahead of her time. So I think she saw that there was a need to think of a different way for people to be supported in their senior years, and that housing is a critical part of that. So that's what she did her master's on, and then she soon became a partner in a firm in Vancouver, and had a full career as an architect.
Amazing. Yeah. When you first arrived in Canada, where was your first point of entry? Do you remember? Did you fly
Vancouver.
right to Vancouver?
We boated to Boston, and then we flew to Vancouver. Yeah.
So, do you have memories of those first few days and weeks on Canadian soil? Was it very different from what you remembered in South Africa?
Yeah, no, I do have memories. We stayed in a motel in Kingsway, on Kingsway in Vancouver. It's called the 2400 Motel, and it's there still today. It's an icon of 50s architecture.
Right.
And we stayed there, and we came in midwinter, so I was 7.5, and it was just before or after Christmas, and it was really cold.
I bet it was really cold.
It was
even for Vancouver.
Yeah, I hadn't experienced snow before, so I remember that. And
what would you remember about the snow?
Well, I was excited about it. It was something so strange and bizarre to have this fluffy, cold, wet stuff, and so yeah, no, I think we went down to Portland for Christmas, where my mom's parents were. So my memories are positive of coming to Canada, but you know, it was it's not that easy being a 7-year-old and coming to a country, leaving your best friends behind, leaving your cousins and your aunts and uncles behind, and we didn't actually have any network in Vancouver at that time. So when we have discussions about bullying, I can really relate personally. Because as a young elementary school child, and even early high school, I didn't fit in. I had an accent. I probably dressed different. I had been to school in Afrikaans in South Africa. So even though we're an English family, my schooling was in a different language. So I was having to learn to adapt to the Canadian school system, and really I wasn't part of the group. And so then that's a pretty good prescription for being bullied. So I experienced quite a bit of that in my younger years.
How long did it last?
I think until grade 8. And
wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, not severe bullying, but definitely some exclusion and some overt bullying. So,
how did it impact you as a person?
It made me more introspective. I became a voracious reader. And so I think I hid behind schoolwork and reading. And I had friends as well.
Yes.
But I think it, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what I did. Other than that, I became spent more time with myself and reading, and with a network of close friends. So.
Was education always emphasized in your family? Or was there a strong sense that you would become something in particular? Did your parents have?
No. I had no idea graduating what I would do. So, I mean, I graduated in 1971, and I was 16 when I graduated.
Right.
Because of coming from South Africa, and my parents put me into a higher grade, I guess. So I was a bit younger than my peers. I graduated just ready for an adventure, so I went traveling for a year and a half.
Did you? A year and a half?
Went to South Africa.
To see family or to see?
Well, I enrolled in Cape Town University as a way to re-experience South Africa, and did go to a family reunion of over 200 Murray family members in South Africa.
What was it like to go back to South Africa, having known the history of why your parents left, and still with the country in an apartheid state?
Well, it was actually very difficult. I mean, it was. The attitudes there felt like, North America decades before, when there was still a lot of racial discrimination. And, I mean, obviously it was a built-in racial discrimination in South Africa. And so being in Cape Town University, and there were no black people, no black students. I mean, it's a segregated university, and the classics of the bench for whites or the bench for non-whites, the restaurants for whites that excluded non-whites. I mean, it was shocking. My sister and I were both down there for 8 months, and we were shocked and dismayed. So it was actually not that positive an experience to be there, because it just felt like, what can we do about this?
Right.
I mean, how can they be this way in this country?
Right.
And it was a country that included our family and our aunts, uncles, and cousins who we cared about.
Sure.
So it was confusing and deeply upsetting.
Did they talk about it, or did you talk about it with them, the family that was there?
We did. I mean, I think that many people in the white community rationalized the situation. I went back after democracy,
Yes.
and so in 2002, and visited most of my family over the course of a week. And some of my family members were hugely positive about the change after democracy, even though it might cost the white community opportunities. Other family members were very concerned about the kinds of changes that were happening, even though, you know, theoretically they thought democracy was good. It was actually there were some other changes that were worrisome to them. So I think South Africa's done an amazing job of
It has. It's a remarkable country.
Post-colonial world, and the kind of just leadership and the iconic leadership that Nelson Mandela played in that situation. So I think South Africa was very fortunate to have him as a key presence in that transition.
Yeah. You came home,
Yeah.
and somewhere along the line, you became a tree planter.
Yeah.
Was it to support yourself for school, or what was the...
Yeah, well, I actually spent a year in London after...
Okay.
So you see, I like adventure.
Well, but it
So
seems very different to go from these travels to very interesting and wonderful places to being a tree planter.
Yeah.
I mean, those are very different experiences.
Oh, well, it's also the element of adventure. I mean, I hitchhiked in Europe. I found a place in London and lived there. I was still, you know, just 18 or something. Lived there for a year. I was a music student at the Trinity College of Music. Got myself a job in some low-paid work. It was interesting in order to get to know people. And
Right.
traveled a bit around Britain for that year, and came back, and I think it was a year after that, and so then I went to SFU, enrolled in
Right.
SFU, and I came back, and my sister had met some tree planters, and so the following year I decided to get work in planting trees. That's age 19, I guess. 19.
And it really influenced the path of your life.
It totally, and I had a different path picked out. I was actually in a different direction with my schooling. I was going into archaeology. I was offered a chance to go on a dig in Bella in the summer of 1974, and then I had this opportunity to go up into some mountain, some inlet up a mountainside of coastal British Columbia where the contractor needed workers, and I decided, so, you know, go to a dig in Bella or go and plant trees on a mountainside. I chose the tree planting. So.
And you met your future husband.
Yeah, the following year I met my future husband. Yeah.
Was it back-breaking work? I mean, was the first year not tough enough? Because you, and I'm sorry that I've forgotten the term, is it highballer?
Yeah.
You were referred to as a highballer,
Yeah.
which is like the biggest compliment.
Well, it means you're productive and capable. Yeah.
Yes, but the most productive and the most capable.
Well, maybe I'm a bit competitive, so.
So you enjoyed the work enough to go back.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed the work, and I mean, that first year I was in Knight Inlet, I was in Kinkham Inlet, I was at Rivers Inlet, so these incredibly spectacular parts of coastal British Columbia, out in the forests, and there used to be forests, but on logging roads, incredibly steep hillsides, incredibly hard work, carrying heavy trees up mountainsides, up and down all day long. But the camaraderie, the camp life, the sense of adventure, I loved it. And the second year I worked with Dirk, so he was a small contractor at the time, and I can tell you how I became a highballer. It's pretty simple. There was about half of us were women, so there was about 12 women, and there was about 12 guys. And the guys were doing 1,000, 1,200 trees a day, and the women were doing 500 or 600 trees a day, and that's just the way it was. And one evening at the end of the day, the contractor, Dirk,
Who would become your husband?
who became my husband, was addressing the group afterwards. The productivity was a bit lower than was needed to get through this contract in the time frame allotted. And so he made a joke. He said, "No dinner for anyone who doesn't plant 1,000 trees tomorrow." And so I thought, what does he mean? No dinner. He was joking.
Yes.
But it made me think, now, why am I planting so much less than the guys? Is there any real reason for that? And I just decided, okay, I'm planting 1,000 trees tomorrow. And I went from 600 to 1,000
in a day.
In a day. And it was simple. I started right off the bat. I didn't hover around the truck. I didn't take much in the way of breaks, very, very short. And I worked to the end of the day, and I didn't lollygag, actually. So for me, it was just a matter of changing my style of working.
Yeah.
And from then on, I realized I could be as productive and maintain quality as anybody of any of the other gender. Why not? And I'll make more money.
Were you paid by tree?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good jump in a day.
Not that we were paid all that much.
No,
but,
I'm sure. And you and your husband, in the end, out of your combined interest in reforestation, started a company together.
That's right.
A highly successful company that
Well,
continues to this day? Or is it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was, so that was 75. Dirk and I worked together, and we were life partners shortly after that, and then got married in 1977. And then after that, the business started to grow because there was two of us,
right.
able to think about how to get more contracts. And so in 78, we had 2 simultaneous crews. 79, we had 5, and we decided, all right, this is actually a business, not just something we enjoy doing part of the year and in order to finance school or whatever.
Right.
And then by 1980, we had 10 crews going at once. And
you had children, too, did you know? When did your
right.
kids first start arriving?
Well, I had, Bubba was born in 1978, Eric in 1980, and Dawn in 1984.
Wow.
And the business has diversified and grown, and I'm not actively involved, obviously, and I haven't been since I entered politics in 2001.
Yeah.
But already by 2001, we had a division in Central America, and today the business is doing a lot of work supporting First Nations in being able to manage the resources in their traditional areas in British Columbia. And we have a pretty thriving division in Central America, and we have an emerging division in the United States.
You know, it's been such a pleasure to have the opportunity to chat with you, and there's so many more questions that I'd love to ask. We started off with a bit of politics, and I would have loved to have covered more of your interest in getting involved. But we're going to have to save that for another show, because it's just been such a fascinating chat. I really have enjoyed it, and I appreciate that you would take the time in what maybe a calmer schedule now, but it's still a hectic schedule.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to do it again sometime, and I hope any of the young women watching this think to themselves, I can be a leader in business or in politics, because frankly, we need more women leaders, more women on boards, more members of parliament, you name it. So women are totally capable of doing anything they choose to do. It's just a matter of deciding to do it and being game for an adventure.
That's a great way to end it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Catherine.